And he never contemplated all this technology until COVID.
About 30 seconds. There we
You
go.
have to tell the mayor that clock's wrong.
I was looking
I
at
have
two
to
apple
fix
products. All right.
That's okay. Whenever the clock chimes next door, it's a 2-minute warning. So I know that I've got 2 minutes to get someplace if I've got to be there on the hour.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to the, what is today? February 15th meeting of the Town of Georgetown Planning Commission. First order of business is approval of the minutes from January 18th regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Well, can I ask a question? And then forgive me if I'm wrong here. I know that I had written in comments and an email to planning and zoning, which went out to everybody. Would that not be correspondence received?
Are you talking about the minutes?
Yeah, it was never mentioned that I put in comments.
I mentioned your comments. I read your comments.
Right.
I say they came from Eric Evans.
Okay, I didn't know if it would be, because it said correspondence received, it said none. I didn't know if it needed to go that direction or not.
It might have been because I was looking at it from the reflection that you are a member of Planning Commission and you were giving your comments to other members to address for you if you were concerned about it, but I will check on that legally.
Yeah, and I'm fine either way and or.
And I might have just missed it when I was doing it. So,
Because I can guarantee you that it's going to happen again sometime down the road.
so if you want, you can approve them with the revision of adding your comments to
I'll
the,
second to approving them right now. I mean, I'm not worried about commas. I just want to make sure that we're covered.
Okay.
Well, then I would suggest that we amend it to approve with the condition that your comments be added. How's that?
Well, approved with the conditions that correspondence was received.
You don't want it to reflect your actual comments?
No, they weren't read. I don't think.
They were addressed.
Oh, they were addressed, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, I have a
Kill the horse.
motion. Can I
And a
get
second.
a motion and a second? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And then the next is the approval of the January 24th workshop meeting minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so our first order of business is ordinance 2022-12, discussion of proposed revisions to chapter 230-25 UR1, permitted uses, adding a new section for residential single-family leased communities. Ordinance 2022-12, permitted uses, planning commission presentation, final. Mr.
I hope
Dvorak.
so. Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to come this evening. Some of the information will be a rehash of what was discussed at the workshop, and some of it will be some new things. Well, I'll go through it. So just some actions that have taken place. So the initial presentation on the ordinance was on December 21st, 2022. At that meeting, there was a request if we could have a workshop with the Planning Commission. That workshop did take place on January 24th. During that meeting, we decided that it would be best to come back under old business at this meeting of the Planning Commission, go through everything, make sure what was reflected and discussed at the workshop was reflected into the ordinance, some additional items for discussion, and then the intent would be that we would have a public hearing at the March 15th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, which would be a fully revised ordinance reflecting everything that was agreed to from the original inception, based on the workshop and then based on the presentation tonight. So just rehash that this is consistent with the housing goals as outlined in the comprehensive plan. The creation of the residential single-family lease community consisting of single-family homes would further at least 6 of the goals that were identified in the 2021 comprehensive plan. This dealt with a range of housing types, prices, densities, and housing types for senior citizens, additional housing affordable to the average Georgetown household, recognizing needs of various household types, Review of town ordinances updated as needed to provide opportunities for new market rate and workforce housing through redevelopment or infill development. Direct housing development in areas of the town where public water and wastewater services efficiently serve, and support a balanced range of housing types, including workforce housing and homeownership opportunities, and then considering amending the town code based on evaluation of needs, provide greater flexibility for housing development, potentially including smaller unit footprints, decreased minimum lot areas, and housing type styles, i.e. workforce housing, veterans. Some of those overlap, but some of them are unique unto themselves. So benefits to the town from this type of an ordinance would, we would have one owner and point of contact for the entire property. This would ensure continuity of housing design and construction materials, and it would also give us a degree of certainty with respect to maintenance related to landscaping, lawn maintenance, things like that on a regular basis. There would not be multiple utility bills. This would be one bill for water, sewer going to the property owner. Certainly increases the town's tax base. It would increase our housing options, and again, these are all single family, no multifamily resident, no multifamily apartments. And it would result in an increase in population, providing needed housing options for young professionals, the local workforce, as well as senior citizens. So I'm not sure if everyone saw the Cape Gazette article, but within 0.3 miles from the Cheer Center, there's a project called Leeward Chase. It's a market rate rental community without apartments. It's planning or proposing 52 duplex buildings totaling 106 units. And one of the keys there was their market study showed, quote, there are no family-oriented rental units in the county. And I think we've heard this over and over again from Sussex County Today and Tomorrow conference. We've heard it from the county when they were trying to deal with affordable housing, and certainly it's affecting us here in Georgetown. So anything you see with a green check mark means there was no changes, and we all agreed, so those will be where we have the least amount of discussion. So the ordinance elements, this was a new permitted use, residential single-family lease community, and as with any good ordinance, we add a definition so everybody's clear on what that is. The next one was how we were going to handle review standards and conditions. So this was that they would be handled with standards comparing to the comprehensive plan, recognizing principles of good civic design, land use planning, landscape architecture. Minimum lot, yard, and area widths of the UR zoning would not apply because we have no setbacks. We're all one parcel, one owner. Design standards, now these are, so that you see each one goes with item A on the ordinance. Will be on the slide. So I think everyone was in agreement. The total parcel size for establishment of a residential single-family lease community shall be a minimum of 20 acres. This is not something we're trying to create on every vacant lot in the town of Georgetown. So it was a 20-acre minimum. The maximum permitted density should be 6.05 detached single-family units per acre. And during the workshop, this was based on the town code height, area, and bulk regulations for the UR1 district. For 1 acre, which is 43,560 square feet, divided by 7,200 square feet per lot would be a density of 6.05. Maximum height of 35 feet. Anything you see struck in red is deleted. So that was one of the things we had an extensive discussion on how high, how many stories. So the compromise at the workshop was, let's just say the maximum height will be 35 feet. I think we talked roof pitches and whatnot, but we didn't want to see something 3 stories. So no issue with that. Design standards again, item E, all dwellings shall be set back from the outer edge of the curb on the street, which it fronts a minimum of 15 feet for a dwelling with garages, and the garage portion shall be set back from the same a minimum of 20 feet. So this is just a sketch. So here's the sidewalk, back 15 feet to the dwelling unit with 20-foot deep driveway, 15 foot to the dwelling, 20-foot deep garage.
So you got sidewalk, and up there in the language it says curb.
Should be back up sidewalk. That's why we're having this workshop.
That's what was throwing me off. And then they still have to have a 20-foot parking spot, correct?
Yeah, I think the parking is what's required in the code.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold on the sidewalk thing because I just want to have, we'll get to that one.
Yeah, I know.
There's two areas that we want to have discussions on. For item G was the dwellings had a minimum setback from the outside parcel boundaries all the way around 20 feet, and then an appropriate fencing or landscape buffer along the perimeter boundary for private or adjacent where it may be required as appropriate. There might be some instances where it's adjoining a existing community, so we may not want fencing, might just want trees. But if it's adjoining something, railroad tracks or an industrial site or a commercial area, you may want fencing so that there's a benefit between the commercial staying commercial and the residential staying as residential. The design standards, streets shall have a minimum right-of-way of 40 feet with a minimum travel surface inclusive of rolled curb, and there was a request to move it to 30 feet from 25. And I believe that was based on what the fire marshal required was 12.5 feet for the travel lanes to get to 25, and then this gets you to 30, and then we have an additional requirement of 5 feet of sidewalk on either side. Next one was all streets, sidewalks, streetlights shall remain private, and the repair and maintenance shall be the sole responsibility of the owner. And then there was a request to remove the recreational amenities because further in the ordinance, we required that as a part of its review, the category review that's taking place refers back to what you have to do from an amenity standpoint. So there was no point in being duplicative. Okay, design standards. So the request was to, initially we said one representative was requested that we add, if there's a change in management, and they provide at least 2 contact numbers, so if there's something that needs to be dealt with. And then this goes back to the review as a category 1 site plan for where the amenities would fall out. So there was 4 elements that were requested to be added. First one was the rear distance between primary structures shall be a minimum of 20 feet. A request that a utility and emergency access easement be dedicated to the town of Georgetown. That would allow the Georgetown Police Department, Fire Department, EMS to get onto the property. No detached accessory buildings were permitted. We had an extensive discussion around sheds, what could be allowed out back, whether or not. So we decided it was recommended none, and then there was a request. You're going to need some storage, that they would provide a minimum of 50 square feet of storage for each dwelling unit, whether it's attached on the back. I go back to the first apartment I had, I think on one side of my balcony was an HVAC unit, and then on the other side was a closet door that I could put boxes or bicycle stuff that I wasn't using on a regular basis.
Now, any questions that we have, do you want to hold till the end, or do you want us to bring it up now?
Completely up to you guys.
Just on that end a little bit, I don't know if we could just get a little more descriptive on that. What I don't want them to come
Which
back on N, the minimum square feet,
N,
50
N.
of storage. The only thing I don't want to do is them to come back and say, hey, I got 50 square feet of attic space. I think it's somewhere it needs to say it's an exterior entrance storage space or something along those lines. You know, I don't.
You want, with exterior access?
With exterior access would
Would
probably
that-
be appropriate
okay.
for that. I just don't want it to say, you know, hey, I got 50 square feet of attic space upstairs that's storage. So just some of exterior access would be my only.
Okay, and I
my
think
only
the
change on that.
discussion was if they had a kayak, a bicycle,
Correct,
or
correct.
kid stuff
Yep,
that they need
correct.
to put away. Okay, that's a good upgrade.
Thank you.
Okay, so now the items with the question mark, and there's only 2 of them, it's not a whammy, we're not gonna try to catch anybody or anything. We had a lot of discussion on the separation between the dwellings, and initially it was proposed 10 feet, and then we had a discussion on maybe we should do 14 feet. And it was pointed out in the workshop as well as the original presentation that a 10-foot separation is common in other communities in Sussex County as well as in many town centers. So just wanted to show you some. These are all existing projects within Sussex County that have a 10-foot separation or less. So these, I believe, are all within the peninsula. And these are homes in, I wrote Anne Arundel in my notes, and that's not right. Bethesda, Maryland. Now, they're not comparable to what's being constructed here because these are $400,000 or $500,000 homes. But clearly, we've got a 10-foot separation.
These are all in unincorporated areas, are they not?
No.
Which ones aren't?
Well, they're in Sussex County,
No, I mean, in an incorporated town where their design standards would supersede county.
I don't think any of those are within a municipality, but I will tell you, I did not do a study of municipal design standards.
Yeah, I don't think they are, but that's a point that we have to think about.
So one thing we talked at the beginning with the Leeward Chase, so this is their plan that was associated with their application to plus for the preliminary land use, but they are doing the side and rear yard footage, and they have a maximum building height of 42. But you can see that it's fairly similar with what
Man,
you
that's a
see
lot
on
of
the
wetland.
prior slide and what was been presented.
Chewy.
The other thing we did find out is Ring Lardner from the Davis Bone and Ferdell did check the International Residential Code, and exterior walls of single-family and duplex homes only require a 5-foot separation when not sprinklered or using a fire-rated walls, including the eaves, and multifamily requires the 10-foot separation, same as single-family or duplexes. So again, that's an international standard.
Wait a minute, what's that?
What's that?
Back that up?
So if you look at the International Residential Code,
Right,
for separation with buildings,
to the property line.
5-foot separation between the two. That's the minimum.
I have to go
Minimum.
back and look at that, because I think it's 5 feet to the property line, and not 5 feet between separation.
Okay, well, if it's to the property line, if you did an imaginary property line, it would be there 10 feet.
Right,
Yeah.
but, and that includes the eaves and soffits. That's straight up. So the
Yeah, I'm
soffits,
trying to think there was,
it's kind of like if you own the property, your property line goes from ground to
Yeah.
sky.
trying to think if there was a chart, and there was a sketch,
Yes, there is.
and it had the eaves.
It's like in,
And I want to say it could be 5 feet if the eave was fire rated.
yes,
So if it came up, fire wouldn't encroach and get into the attic of the guy next door or into your structure.
correct. So if
Yeah.
you had a hardy board, soffit, and then fire-rated plywood on top, you'd be covered.
Right.
That's the way I interpret the code.
Yeah, that's what I'm pretty sure, what you just described is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So, but
I
it
mean, the
was
county's the
with
one that's
overhang.
gonna be inspecting this stuff one way or the other, it goes to the county.
It'll be the
anyhow, so
county, yeah,
It'd be up to how they interpret the code.
it'll be county code review, just like all projects
Yep.
in
It'll
town.
get the
State
planning
fire
board.
marshal will look at it as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
So the next piece was sidewalks and streetlights. Initially, it was at least on one side, and then there was a request to consider doing it on both sides. And just some information gathered. So if you were to do consumer preferences, almost all choose to work on the walk on the roadway itself, even when sidewalks are provided. Concrete is harder than asphalt. Sometimes the slope, similar to driveways, goes away from the home towards the street. And if you're walking on a sidewalk, likely to encounter a driveway every 28 feet. Installing sidewalks on both sides of the street takes away 5 feet of open space from the tenant yard, which is part of what we want. The reason they're trying to move out of an apartment is so they have a yard. And then internal sidewalks generally are not used even when provided. I think there was a great study on urban planning that before you put pavers down on a college campus or a school, go and see where the people walk first, because that's where they're going to go, not where you've put the pavers. Additionally, the National Association of Transportation Officials identified on shared streets, the street itself serves as a path of travel. In certain instances, it's advantageous to build a shared use path adjacent to the main roadway as a substitute for a sidewalk. And I think one of the things we had talked about was the possibility of sidewalk on one side and then multimodal path throughout the community that then could connect to other things. I think you see that more and more now. I know when you go out by county seat apartments, we've got a multimodal path. Certainly with Cheer expansion, they're connecting their path around the new apartments to the existing multimodal path that will connect them now to 9 and Sand Hill Road at Lewis Georgetown Highway, continues on to the multimodal path across Sussex Academy, and then connects to the Lewis Georgetown Trail to go either to Lewis or come into town. And then this is the same rendering that was shown before. a conceptual of what a potential streetscape might look like. I believe in this one, the sidewalk is on this side of the street versus that side. And that's all I have.
Can I back up just a couple?
Sure.
So, I mean, I think it was
You want me
me.
to back up on the presentation as well?
That's up to you. I'm going back to the streets. So I think it was my comments that said sidewalks on both sides, and it says sidewalks and streetlights. Streetlights, I think, are designed by Delaware Co-op, Delaware
Yes,
Electric,
we-
or whatever.
in
So
town
they
we
will,
use-
they will determine from
The
what
location, yeah, we
Right.
use Delmarva's neighborhood lighting plan.
Right, so I just think, streetlights, the development should have streetlights as recommended. It doesn't necessarily will be on one side or both sides or anything like that. Sometimes they stagger them, and sometimes they do run them on one side. So, and it was mine saying that we needed sidewalks on both sides of the street. I could almost negotiate with this if the walking trail is not part of the amenities. Because so many people use, well, we've got 4 acres of passive amenities, and it's just a walking trail going around the development. So I don't mind walking trails, but I don't think it should be included in amenities. But then at the same time, if we're removing the 5 feet, you're concerning me in regards to off-street parking. It's something in there I'm not comfortable with when it comes to reducing the sidewalk. I
So,
don't
but
mind.
I don't want the sidewalk used for parking. I mean, it
Pardon?
shouldn't be something where people are driving up on the sidewalk to park.
Right, no, I understand that, but it's, I don't mind the walking trail, the multimodal paths. Okay, I just think that whenever we reduce you're removing the 5 feet in front, so now we're gonna move the curb 15 feet to the house instead of 15 feet to the sidewalk. You see what I'm saying? So the road's getting closer to the house. I guess
Well,
that's
so it's a
where
minimum of, the distance is a minimum. They could be back farther.
They could be, but the parking could be off to the side, so if it's off to the side, the house won't be back 20 feet.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that's what concerns me in that aspect is I'm putting the curb, possibly putting the curb 15 feet to the front of the house, and I'm, off the top of my head, couldn't tell you the Georgetown code, is the front porch allowed to encroach 5 feet in the front setback?
Depends where you are.
Right, is it in the residential?
If it's existing already and you're putting a fill one in,
So
everybody else is
there's a
that
whole
way.
lot of things in there that I would have to look at a lot closer in detail, and that's why I think the sidewalk ensures that the house is at least 15 feet from the sidewalk.
Well, let me ask you a question. If the sidewalk was on the side of the property that the house was on versus the opposite side, I would think, and I try to
Then
think,
the road
so,
is, then the road's 7.5, then the road is, with the sidewalk and the curb, it's 7.5 feet plus the 15 feet away from the driving aisle. So we're 15 feet from the sidewalk,
right,
right?
so then the sidewalk 5 feet, so now you're 20, so you're 22 and a half from the drive lane.
Right. So accidents are a little less to happen, maybe. I'm just trying to move the house. I understand the idea of
Yeah,
the
no,
house.
what I'm
Is it
saying is.
compromise to say that the
What I'm
sidewalk
saying
has
is,
to be on
does it
the,
make sense to have the sidewalk on the side where the dwelling unit is versus on the side that the dwelling unit isn't?
Yes.
Or,
Well, if there's no dwelling unit, I could say, yeah, it doesn't need a sidewalk.
I mean, otherwise you're putting a sidewalk in, no one's ever gonna use.
Yes, no, and I agree. If there's not a dwelling unit through there, it really doesn't have to have a sidewalk. Because I'm just trying to protect the kids playing in the front yard,
Sure.
15 feet from the
Well,
curb.
and we know this from Georgetown today. The kids are gonna put the basketball hoop, it's gonna start out here.
And it's going to end up in the curb.
It's gonna be here
Yes.
until a car comes by and says, "You kids can't do that." And then they'll drag it back in, and 5 minutes later, it'll be back out.
Right. All I'm trying to do is just protect get the separation between the people and the house a little bit in that aspect. I'm not sure how to word that.
I guess, Gene, to your way of thinking, it's fine unless they build houses on both sides of the street. And then you'd have to have sidewalks on both sides of the street.
If it's open space on the other side, I don't think it needs sidewalk. Let the multimodal path go wherever it goes. If it's next to a pond, it doesn't need to have sidewalk. But if I've got housing, I think there should be a sidewalk in front of the house, just to keep the distance between the road and
So, I mean, it's sort of a compromise that at least one side, there needs to be sidewalk in front of all dwelling units.
And that might be a way to word it is sidewalk in front of all dwelling units.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just trying to think this through, and I'm certainly not a designer, but if it
Neither
was
am I.
coming down the street and I've got homes and then there's a pond, I could have them cross over with a crosswalk
Absolutely.
to join it, and then the multimodal path goes around the back of the pond, and then it crosses over where the homes pick up again.
Yep,
Right, okay, correct.
yep.
Okay, so sidewalks in front of all dwelling units, okay. And what I'll do is I'll get wording that makes, and then, on the street lighting, would you be comfortable if, so one of two things, we could take street lighting out, because I don't know of any other district. And I think what we do is, we standardized on the Granville fixture for our communities that are residential, and the shoebox for parking lots. And then, is it the torch? I'm trying to think what is on Carmine Way. It's not shoeboxes.
I just think it needs to have streetlights, whatever's
Wherever,
designed
but
by.
I'd let an outside guy design it, not us. So could we take streetlights out with that?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I've got a development that has no streetlights in it. They put a curb light, every house has to pay for their own electricity all the way down through on all the posts.
So what do they have to, at the end of the driveway, there's a
At the
post?
end of the driveway, there's a post, yep.
Yeah, okay.
And it works out and it looks good, and the HOA requires everybody to change the light bulbs, so I mean, but yeah, just as long as it's lighted for
Okay.
pedestrians or whatever, walking or driving or whatever.
Okay.
Now, on the sidewalks, are they gonna follow the design and construction standards, same as the town?
Yes, that would still be what the
Still
town
what this
requires, the
town is,
5
okay.
foot with the,
Yep.
what we don't want is tar and chip and then,
Yeah,
you know.
okay,
Right.
all right, cool.
Now, keep in mind, if somebody has an issue with a sidewalk, they're not gonna be calling the town to come and
Yes.
grind it down, or it's
Yes.
gonna be a,
Right, it's gonna be up to the homeowner,
the
or
owner's
the
gonna be
property.
responsible for
Property,
it.
yep.
And the sidewalk still should meet standards, so, you know, whenever I saw that, well, you're gonna have driveways and slopes, that sidewalk still can't be over 2%
The grade,
slope
yep.
anywhere, so, in that aspect, I kinda threw that one out the window, because the driveway comes down, and then 2%, and then another 4%, and figure it out from there, you know? But, yep, I'll let you guys argue about separation of houses, because I'm happy with that, so far as preserved, my opinion. That's just my opinion. You guys can decide whether you like the 5, 6, or 7 feet.
Well, I'd like to take the discussion in a little different direction, if
Okay.
you will. Are we done with the presentation? Any
Yeah,
questions?
this is all you.
I'm not, I mean, I've got one other question, Linda.
Sure.
This is just something that, of course, you read it 100 times and come up with 100 different things, but on E, on the draft,
Yes,
something that popped in today with 2 rooms of detached single-family dwelling may be rented separately on a temporary basis.
Yeah, that's a question.
say that again?
The E, 2 rooms of a detached single-family dwelling may be rented separately on a temporary basis, so basically subleasing and within the house.
That's the old ordinance, that's not the new.
Currently in the code. It's
That's
currently
already there. The new
It's out.
ordinance goes down to G. That is in, that is in the R zoning currently.
UR1 zoning has that now. That's
Okay, yeah, no, this is a whole new section to
Okay.
UR1, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
All right, that's fine then.
No, we're not, again,
We'll
the
address that in
intention is
another
not
workshop.
to create overcrowding or subletting.
All right, I'll
There's a
address
couple
that.
of things in, you know, the very first meeting we talked, and you may have been dialing in, I can't remember if you were here or not.
Mm-hmm.
But the analogy was, instead of a vertical apartment, it's a horizontal apartment.
Okay.
So the difference is you don't have a neighbor banging the basketball above you
Gotcha.
or the kid screaming below
Okay.
you, but you got a little bit of space.
Yep,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you. Linda, that's all I got.
Okay. I just want to talk a little bit about the bigger picture in terms of rentals in town. I've been looking at a lot of figures, and what's disturbing to me is to find out that Georgetown, the most recent calculation, has home ownership at only 36.4%, and the rest is non-owner occupied, which is very high, because when I looked at the other towns that have a similar population, their owner-occupied percentage is much higher than ours. So that's a major concern of mine, especially since two primary or premier housing projects that were supposed to come on board back in 2006, primarily the Oaks and the Parsonage, were both 200-plus single-family home developments. One has become a soccer field out behind Cheer, and the other is Oaks, which had revised its site plan, and the number of single-family homes were just a handful compared to what they were going to put out there in terms of rental properties and condos and townhouses, I believe it was. So I think that we need to take a step back, and we need some information about looking at the total number of rental units that are already approved, those that are already operational, like the Oaks, the ones that are planned behind Walmart, county seat apartments, the large. We need to take account of all the rental properties already in existence, either those that are in operation or that are approved to come online, because that number is going to continue to contribute to a smaller proportion of owner-occupied properties in Georgetown, which has it's not the same as being in a condo community where a lender is going to look at the number of rental units versus the total number of units. But research shows that rental properties do have or can have an adverse effect on property values, especially in neighboring communities. So I think there are things that we need to think about to protect property values in our town, or what's left of them, frankly. So I think we need to take a step back, and we need to look at some of the impact statements.
Well, other than the Village of College Park's apartments, I don't know of any. The Oaks would have been constructed, the apartments, for the 2020 census.
This is our most recent
Yeah, I'm
data.
trying to think if is there any other apartments that we've had proposals for?
Other than the ponds,
Yeah, the ponds.
they haven't
But the Ponds is,
gotten final yet, but
yeah, and they're still, I mean, they've got some hurdles because they're going to be constructing a regional pump station at the plaza, so there's,
What the point being that it's obvious that rental properties are overtaking single-family owner-occupied properties in town. And that should be a concern for all of us as homeowners and as taxpayers.
oh, I would just say that this is different than what we've got in our rental stock today.
No, I
Our
understand
rental
the
stock
difference.
today, and that's why we're doing the aggressive
But it's a rental property.
inspections.
You can call it anything you want, but it's rental. It's not owner-occupied properties.
And
So,
if I may, just, one of the things we're trying to do is make it so young professionals do come to Georgetown, and maybe when they're in a single-family home rental, then they can afford something that becomes their home ownership, and it does, Georgetown's the place. Right now, I'm not sure. So if you look around, I don't think anyone who's living at the Georgetown Apartments, County Seat Apartments, Dunbarton Apartments is looking to buy a single-family home.
well, Dunbarton, that's a whole different,
Well,
we
but
can't.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, we can't,
so-
no.
But I don't think you're going to attract a young professional or a nurse that's working at Beebe Hospital to go to Dunbarton or the Georgetown Apartments. Because the reality is, the beach is full, and where Beebe's putting nurses and folks up at a house in Lewis, within 3 months, they're having to vacate so that the beach rental can take over.
But gee,
Yeah.
another big question mark is this whole issue of affordability. Around us, just not even a mile outside of town, there is the large apartment complex by Bessie, which has 150 or 200 apartments in it. Then you have as you noted in your package, the similar program that's going on down the road, Leeward Chase, is that the name of it? Okay. What's a question in my mind is, we have all of these apartments. What are the current rental, what's current rentals going for? A 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom? And what are the proposed rentals going to be? You probably can't answer this yet, but I mean, it's hard for me to understand that there's going to be that much of a difference. If we're going to allow people to come in, a family, well, there are 3-bedroom apartments here. What's the occupancy rate?
Well, I think part of what's driving certainly the interest in a single-family rental home or a duplex rental home is there's demand. So someone who's got kids and a dog don't want to live in Wilton Meadows.
So
They
it has
wanna-
nothing
Go
to
ahead.
do with affordability. It has something to do with a desire
Well, I
to
think-
live in a different kind of
Well, I
environment.
think it's a demand. So if there wasn't demand for these things, people wouldn't be doing it. If you look at the missing middle, and we're going to deal with this with our temporary shelter facility, I've gotten the folks out of tents. My next step is, where do I get them from there? Because they're not going to be able to walk into Leeward Chase.
Well, they're-
I'm
yeah,
going to get
they're
them
not going to go here
established.
either.
What's that?
They're not going to go here either.
Well, I understand that, but it's that missing middle, so there's two pieces. I always look at it as a stepping stone. So somebody who started off in Kimmytown, left Kimmytown and moved over here to Ward 3. And then when the kids were out of school and they were out of college and they moved out of the house, then they moved to Ward 4. You know, if you stayed in Georgetown, that's probably the way a lot of people transferred their entire lifetime.
Well,
What?
I do know that Millsboro and Seaford, they have a similar population to Georgetown. Millsboro has 72% home ownership. Seaford has a 53%, and we're down in the 30s.
If you look
And-
at both of those towns, those are residential developments that are on the outskirts of town. I think our numbers
Well-
are skewed because people have left the downtown center, and it has all
No,
turned into
that's been annexed into town.
But it's still
New
it's a
development
subdivision.
around.
It's like the Cinderberry. Cinderberry's in town.
But it doesn't change the fact that when you look at the overall numbers, it's skewed in favor of home ownership. You know, they're not building workforce housing in Millsboro. They're not building it in Seaford. They're building apartments, but they're not workforce housing. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
there's
no,
a whole
I'm just-
element of the economics here that still is unexplained. Why is it more affordable or more, aside from the fact that you're looking at a single-family house, that to me is the only thing that you're saying is what's going to tip the scales in favor of somebody picking this place, as opposed to a 3-bedroom garden apartment.
And
Okay?
that is what is going to
That's,
scale.
well, let's call it what it is.
Yeah, but I mean, homeownership is on the decline in the United States. You know, millennials aren't buying houses. A lot of people can't afford to buy houses. So rentals, you know, are increasing. There's a huge demand for rentals. You know, this is
And a lot of
this
seniors
is
are
designed to
doing the
be
same thing.
You're not going to live here.
a more upscale type of rental product.
Seniors aren't going to live in this type of environment.
Well, but a senior may come and they say, you know what, we want to live in Sussex County, Delaware, but we don't know where.
Well,
So they
as a
come and they
temporary
get an
rental.
apartment for 3
Yeah.
months, and then they go out and they say, you know what, let's see what Milton's like, let's see what Seaford's like, let's see what Georgetown is like. I will tell you, one of the struggles we have here is being the county seat, is more people come into town to work than live in town and work.
Right.
And most of the
Tell me about it.
people who live in town work outside of the town.
So can I go back to, and I want to put the train back on the track so we're not in Ohio anymore. We're not here to discuss whether this works or not. We're not here to discuss what piece of property this is going on or not. We're not here to discuss what is the value of the property, what is the rent. We're here to discuss, does this ordinance make sense and will it fit anywhere on 20 acres, anywhere within the town, and do we like this? I love what you're saying.
Well, I just,
I mean, I love what you're saying. However, I believe council should be addressing that, and you should be on council, because then you can dictate,
please.
and decide in that aspect. I don't think that
No,
We're here to
we
review.
advise them.
We're here to
We
review,
advise
we're
them.
here to review an ordinance
Yes,
only,
of which there is an impact on our town,
only the ordinance. We
which
have,
has an impact on our town.
right, but we haven't seen the site plan yet.
Well, I'm even before the site plan.
But the
But you can't.
point of putting this ordinance in is to attract more housing to the town of Georgetown.
Absolutely.
You know, we want to attract commercial development. It's not going to come until we have the residents to support it.
You have to have rooftops.
Let's go back to the original plan for this property for single-family homes. Let's go back to that.
But we have no control over what a developer wants to do with the property.
No, but we have control of what we allow in our town and what makes sense for
This
the
is
future.
true. So do we want this town to grow or not?
No, it's not either
Yes.
or. No, it's
Yes,
not.
it is.
No, it is not. I don't agree with you.
We,
Like I said, I make a motion, if you guys don't have, you need to determine what you want to do on the separation. I had the 7 feet, I've seen it. 5 feet's tight, you gotta have the fire separation. I know that whenever they did it in the peninsula, the first few inspectors didn't catch it, and Miller and Smith had to come back in and rehab a bunch of the homes to get
To
the.
put in the fire rating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you wanted to go to 6 feet,
We'll get the
soft
public
it,
comments in a minute.
then we got to, then you have 12 feet separation. I like 7 myself. That's up to you all on how you want to discuss that. And then, I say that's, I'm done with killing the horse.
Well, one thing I will point out, and we've had this before, and I think it's come up on many projects, is if they build a project outside the town limits, our roads bear the brunt. I can assure you, if there's a problem at Leeward Chase, the town of Georgetown Police Department's gonna be dispatched.
Yeah,
It's
my
not gonna be a
taxes are
state
affected.
trooper.
I wanted that property out of the racetrack. I said,
So what's your
annex it.
point? So what's your point?
Well, we're gonna be the persons who lose.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna get the police service. Now, if you go back, when I first came here, we were going to do a regional pump station at Sports at the Beach. There's no longer a need for the town to provide any sewer going east because Artesian's got it.
Yeah.
And the county for water, so
And we pay
our
for that
growth
lift
that
station.
way is not, well.
Well, this development or a development that would follow this ordinance is going to have an impact on police. It's going to have an effect on all first responders and the
Sure.
school system.
But what I'm
We
saying
know
is,
that.
I would rather
We know
it be
that.
within the town limits and us getting
Yeah.
the tax
Well, the
dollars.
state police have to get involved what happens down the road.
But they're
No.
not going to. If there's an
Well-
emergency,
Yeah, no.
it's gonna be the Georgetown police that go first. That's what happens today.
Well, we need to address that, don't
You
we?
can't.
Yeah.
First do. I've been on ambulance runs, gunshots fired, and I'm out of town, and Georgetown PD beats me because first do. Thank you very much. Everybody responds. I sent the alarm off when I worked in Milton by accident, and I had Georgetown PD showing up to make sure that the police station was safe. So it's, everybody call the ball. Happens.
One of the struggles is, and I think we heard this at the Sussex County Today and Tomorrow conference, is every apartment, every house is affordable. The question is who can afford it? And, certainly Dunbarton is affordable to the folks who can afford it.
Well, it's income restricted.
Well, I understand that, but those folks still
That's
can
why.
afford that. And there's things they could potentially do that they could step up, for whatever reason they choose not to. And this is just another tool in our toolbox that if we want to see our population grow, and, I try to think, my first apartment was too far from the firehouse, and I wanted to make every truck, so then I got the next apartment right across the street from the firehouse, and then when I bought my house, it was on the opposite side of the road. But that was my stepping stone. It was first apartment pretty far out, and then the next one closer in, and then finally bought a house. But it wasn't that I walked into Wilmington and bought a house. It took me 5 years to save up the money and figure out the neighborhood I wanted to be in. But I would not want us to sell ourselves short. And I think we can check on some of those statistics, because I've got to believe Seaford and Laurel are very close to us on rentals, because, and ours is going to shift, because now I'm thinking, within Kimmytown, Habitat's building at least 7 lots on just the corner of Rosa and Kimmy, and they're building 2 houses on Tracy Street. And then, are they dividing
Three
that
new ones
second
on
block,
Albury.
second block of Rosa into 3?
Well, that's not going to jump it by 20%.
Well, no, but it's the steps in the right
Just-
direction
I'm
because
just
those
saying.
are home ownership.
I think if you looked at, you have a lot of homes that aren't apartments, that are rentals. And you go and you look at Lewis, you go to look at Rehoboth, Dewey, Bethany, Ocean View, Millville, and they're all done with Airbnb.
They don't
And-
show up as, rental properties,
Correct.
though.
They don't, because when you do the census, there's nobody living in there.
No, that's why I
But they're all
excluded them.
rentals.
I only looked at those municipalities that had like populations, around 7,000, like we have. And similar demographics and similar income. That's what I looked at. Median family income figures. So I tried to do an apple-to-apple comparison, if you will.
So the only thing in the actual presentation we're up for debate at this point is the separation between houses.
Correct.
And I'm leaving that to you all.
I tell you, when we first started this discussion, I thought 10 was too close. Because in my mind, I was thinking residential subdivision. You know, those houses aren't 10 feet apart. You know, why should this look differently? I've had conversations with several people this week, and the further apart we put these houses, the less they can put on the property, the higher the rents.
It does create a sprawl. It does create a sprawl.
So just another facet of what moved us away from our traditional neighborhood design and neighbors interacting was when we started arbitrarily putting in setbacks.
Oh, I agree.
And a setback is an arbitrary number. There's nothing that says this is what the magic number is.
Used to be all front porches on the
Yes,
sidewalk.
exactly.
And
And as you spread them out, it becomes less and less of a community. And your neighbors won't know your neighbors. I mean, Village of Cinderberry is great because everybody walks, they see each other. You know in your community if something's not right.
Yeah, I don't see where a few feet makes a big difference in that regard, though. I mean, I don't think the difference between 10 and 14 feet is going to make a tremendous economic impact on a developer.
Well,
I
it may
think
make
there's
an
still,
economic
if this is something we want, then we should have it meet the standards that we would like to have. It's nice that these other places have 6 feet separation or 10, if that's what they wanted. If we feel that 14 feet would be appropriate or more attractive, then that's what we should ask for. We don't
Right.
have to
And then
follow.
the town that says 10 is acceptable gets the project,
Gets
and we
what?
don't. And then the town that says 10 feet is acceptable gets the
This
project,
is
and we
not going
don't.
to, it's not going to turn somebody away. I can tell you that right now.
I would venture that if the,
This is already
and
underway.
I'm certainly not, I mean, I haven't run financials on something like this, but I would venture that when you start calculating land, construction cost, and what you need to have rents, I mean, I'm sure whenever you guys build a house, you know what the minimum rent you have to make it work.
X amount of units are gonna be your interest. I mean, it's just, it breaks all down, your development costs, your streets, it's gonna take an X amount of houses to produce that number. Then you get to X amount of houses, it's gonna get you back to where you need to be.
Right.
So, I mean, it is a numbers game, it is a house game. I mean, you could have something, and this is just on the developer side, and just being around the stuff that 10 units could change one way or the other. But, I'm not a huge fan of the 10 feet, but I certainly understand. I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we just don't know where the rental cost is going to land. We don't even know.
That's
We-
not up to
Yeah, I
us,
don't
though.
think.
No, I'm just let me finish. We have 3-bedroom apartments out there, and these are going to be 3-bedroom homes, you know, at some point, the difference is, what is the difference going to be? What's going to make these more affordable? Again, it's not going to get down to the dollar.
Yeah, so
It's gonna
a
get
couple
to the-
things as-
It's going to get to the environment.
But that's not our choice.
Yeah, so before we start going down that I'm gonna let some folks that have interest in doing this talk about what the financials are. I mean, they've done the numbers, they know what it is.
Good, then let him speak.
And please state your name, just for the record, before you start speaking.
Jeff Corman, can you hear me? Jeff Corman, I live 5121 Mills Road, Milford, Delaware. My cousin and I own the Circle Building here, where the jewelry store is, and Ballas Financial and Joe Baker and so forth. We rebuilt it, I believe it was 7 years ago. And anyway, we've got decent tenants there, and trying to, attract good people here at Georgetown now. We're currently, we had 2 residential houses on East Laurel Street that we just tore down, and building back a 9,000 square foot office building. Top floor is rented, the first floor is not, if anybody wants it. So. Actually, my mom was born there in 1945, so we, our family has been in Georgetown here since early 1800s. I got a picture of the Circle Building with horses in front of it. But potential future projects for this rental single-family community. I just wanted to say, and John will touch on it more, that for anything that we do, we'll be the contacts. We're not walking away from anything. Or anything like that. That's all I wanted to start saying. And John Burton Jones for Burton Street.
Good evening. John Jones, number 30, The Circle, as Jeff just mentioned. We're here tonight to express our support for the ordinance for the residential single-family lease community. As Jeff mentioned, our ties to Georgetown are long, and we're proud of this town and what we've done, and we're looking to do the best we can and make Georgetown the best place it can be. Jeff and I see great potential and promise for the residential single-family lease community, and our goal would be to one day bring a high-quality project to the town. Today, I think we can all agree that Georgetown and Sussex County are facing a severe shortage of high-quality housing options for our workforce. Our local teachers, nurses, fire, and police all deserve quality housing options, and we believe a single-family lease community can provide that. Jeff and I recently, and I'm glad the questions came up, Jeff and I recently completed a market study for the rental area here in Georgetown. And the information that we got back from the study that we had done was shocking. So today, the vacancy rate in Georgetown
0.
for a rental is 0.7%.
Right.
You compare that to the national average today, the Census Bureau just put out for Q4 2022 was 5.8%. So the nation's at 5.8%, Georgetown is at 0.7%, less than 1%. There is tremendous demand right now for additional rental properties. And I think we've all seen that recently in news articles, newspaper articles. But the projects that we're looking to do would target, obviously, the workforce, our nurses, police, that all are looking for a housing option. In addition to our support for the ordinance change, we would also like to show our support for a 10-foot separation between the homes. I think as we saw on an earlier slide, there are 10 to 12 different examples of that 10-foot separation or less that has been approved in Sussex County. So I think that that's important for everyone to take hold on. Jeff and I left last week's workshop, and we kind of thought the same thing. I know there was discussion about 10-foot was the way that it was originally drafted in the ordinance, and then Eric had the questions about 14 feet. After that meeting, we went back and took a look at a 20-acre rectangular-shaped parcel. So we modeled it out. And we looked at if you had 10-foot separation for roughly a 1,500 square foot home, how many units could you, I think Lance, you were saying the same thing, how many units could you get on that parcel of land? And it aligns, I believe UR1 code right now allows for 6 units to the acre. You're just slightly under that 6 units to the acre with 10-foot separation for a 1,500 square foot home. Interestingly enough, when you go from 10 feet to 14 feet, you lose 15% of the units. So on a 20-acre parcel with 6 units to the acre, 6 times 20, so that's 120 units at 10 feet separation. When you go to the 14-foot separation, that 120 units steps down to roughly 102 units. So you're losing 18 units when we go from 10 feet to 14 feet. And that makes a dramatic difference to the viability of the project, quite frankly. Again, because the goal is to provide a product that the folks here in the community can afford to rent. And when you lose 15% of your units, you're looking at like a $300 plus jump in rent. So if we were looking to rent a 2-bedroom, single-family home at $1,900 a month, that would have to jump up $300, and that doesn't work because there's no market here, right? Folks can't afford that. If we were outside of Washington, D.C., I would say, you know what, it would probably work, but the demographic's different and the income's different.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
In your calculations about the 20 acres and the difference between the 10-foot separation and the 14 feet separation, are you accounting for adequate space for amenities in that calculation?
Yes.
Are you just looking at so talk a little bit about, so you're talking at the 10 feet level, you'll have 120 units. Mm-hmm. And you would have on that 20-acre parcel enough space, aside from the residential component, to provide for parks and
There would be space set aside, correct.
pools or whatever else.
Correct.
Okay, that's my question. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I think to address the sidewalk question as well, again, it's a bit of a perspective here where cost, obviously to build an apartment building, right, are much cheaper on the construction side, right? Your site work's a lot less because you're building up. You know, the single-family homes, it costs a lot of money to build a single-family home and then turn around and rent it and make sure that the project makes sense. So when we look at, you know, adding an additional sidewalk, while again, it may not seem like it's that big of a deal, grand scheme of things, it's just another additional cost that ultimately will turn around and start to push rents up. And we just have to be very, very careful because we do want to make sure that, again, our school teachers, nurses, folks that work here downtown at the court can actually afford to live in the community.
Well, I think we eliminated the sidewalks when it wasn't in front of the house. So
Okay.
that was taken away. If it's going around the pond on that side of the road, there doesn't need to be a sidewalk. So I think we eliminated that one in our discussions, if I'm correct.
Great. In closing, you know, Jeff and I, we want nothing more than to see Georgetown succeed. We saw in an earlier slide, competition for rental communities is quickly coming to Sussex County. My guess is it'll come to Sussex County, and Sussex County will be fine with a 10-foot separation. And, you know, the town could lose out on opportunities. Jeff and I are uniquely positioned to be able to help make real positive change, and our hope is that the town is too.
I just want to
Thank
say
you.
something to you because
Yes.
you're present, at least you honestly answered the question about the impact of the 10 feet versus the 14 feet in
Right.
terms of, that I find to be very helpful.
Right, of course. Because, yeah, right, I understand that.
I mean, the economics part of it is a big question in my mind, and that certainly was something that was of concern to me. Because in my layperson's opinion, it doesn't seem that 4 feet is going to make a tremendous impact on anything.
It
But
didn't to us.
apparently,
It didn't to us either. That's
but
exactly
apparent-
right.
So I thank you for providing that, because it's an important piece of information, I think.
I have a question.
Sure.
I understand the financials and everything like that. But this is different than a regular single-family home development. Because I understand with that, the contractor puts in everything, and he, like you said, the more units, the more money he's gonna get back. With this, you're gonna own those units, so they're gonna be rental units. So I understand you're not gonna get your money back as quick, but by renting them, you're still gonna get your money back. It's just not gonna be as quick as it would if you could.
And yes, and look, to be frank, I am not, you know, a real estate developer, quote unquote. But for Jeff and I, so yes, you're right. You know, my understanding, if this was for sale, you get your money, time value money, you get it a lot sooner than you do on rental. This is gonna be a slow, but for Jeff and I, this is our great-grandmother's homestead. And that means a lot to us.
Right.
So this is why we want to stay involved.
Yeah, you're looking at a 20-year return.
And the difference is, just so everyone understands, that this is simply a numbers game on the developer side. I mean, that's all it is. If you take 18 units out, you just went from a 20-year return to a 35-year return by taking 18 units. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's a game of numbers.
Yeah.
I totally understand it and totally get it. And I think, again, your presentation explaining that a little bit and your side of it from that standpoint does help, I think, everybody sitting here.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, with that being said, I think our discussion's over. I think we can probably move on here. I mean, is everybody with that?
I have one last minor
Sure, go ahead.
question.
Yep.
And this is really for Jean. If the roads are owned by it's a private community, do we lose potential municipal street aid because those are privately owned?
Yes, those roads would not be eligible for municipal street aid. But keep in mind, municipal street aid is a formulary.
I know.
So it's population-based as well as road mileage-based. So
And we
you
fight
can
for it
look at the
every year,
table
right?
every month, every year, and you can see who's getting more and who's getting less.
Yeah.
And the pot of money has been the same since 2009, $6 million.
So the roads will be totally private and
So
they
if
will.
there's a pothole,
Yeah,
owner
I
fixes
understand,
it.
right. But on the opposite side, there's no money coming into the town because they're
yeah,
not.
but municipal street aid, again, municipal street aid in 2010 was cut to zero, so I would never consider it to be it's a nice revenue, but I would not
It's not a
budget my
budget.
entire budget on
It's
it.
not a budget item.
Okay, that's it for me.
Yeah, and I would think trying to think how many miles, it's very small probably the amount of mileage that you would pick up. You really need a development like Village of Cinderberry when we took those roads, and they got included. But street sweeping would be there, if there's a problem with the stormwater management.
Light bill will be
Structure would be
there.
there, light bill.
Water and sewer. I mean, it's a
One
win-win
bill,
for the
water and
town.
sewer, one bill.
Yeah, it's a win-win for the town.
And if it's not paid, I shut it off, and then they'll have
Right.
however many residents are living there mad because they can't take a shower.
I would hope with regard to lighting, though, that there would be an alternative to little lampposts lighting a sidewalk.
What's that? I'm sorry.
With discussion around the lighting in
Well,
the
that-
community?
Yeah, Delaware Electric will put in the light poles. That was just one of the developments that came to Millville was the.
Yeah, well, I would hope that there would be some, Delaware electric power poles out there so that streets would
Well,
be
yeah, well,
adequately.
so you know what the neighborhood lighting program is that's where the Granville fixtures come from.
Right.
So they actually design for you. You give them your site plan, and they'll do the actual candle light so you know where to place a
Okay.
street lamp. Then it's a tariff, fixed rate. Somebody hits the street lamp, they come out and they fix it.
Right.
So the ones here from Layton Avenue to the circle the town owns, something that was done historically, no reason why, but those were responsible. The 4 on this side of the county building, the county is responsible for, but everything else in town is a Delmarva Power fixed tariff.
I'll make a motion, then
do we
we
have to
accept it with the changes that were provided.
Do we have to go to public comment first before motions put in?
And
If there's anybody out there?
we don't have to, but I'm. Okay.
Was there anybody on Zoom?
So,
Let me go find out.
Is there anybody?
well, this isn't a public hearing anyway, so
Okay.
public comment.
If
Gotcha.
after-
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
There's a time for public comment after the vote, so.
Yeah, public comment is required under
There's no one
Delaware
here
law at all
anyway.
meetings now.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Unfortunately.
do we need a vote?
Yes.
Well, I think I do, because what I need to do is, based on your input, is prepare an ordinance that
For
can
public
then
hearing.
have a public hearing, because when we advertise the public hearing, the ordinance has to be available. And I just want to recap, I haven't heard exactly what we're doing on the separation,
So,
but I
separation.
have on the sidewalks is, sidewalks shall be located in front of all dwelling units.
Good.
And we took out the streetlights because those will be designed through neighborhood lighting or whatever program that they use.
Well, I'm going to put it into motion so we can move on here. So I will put into motion to accept the drafted ordinance with the changes made to discussions on the sidewalk, Gene.
Yes.
And I will also approve it with or make the motion that we go with the 10-foot setbacks.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Let's take a roll call vote. Mr. Mears? Commissioner Mears?
I'm a yes, based on everything presented here in discussions tonight.
Mr. Wise?
No, just on the 10-foot separation, I still think there should be at least 14.
Okay. Commissioner Evans?
I'm gonna go with yes, knowing that there's gonna be fire separation, and it's gonna fall into county. I will make a comment, though, when the site plan comes to planning and zoning, I'd like to see grades also with the entire site plan, so I know that I got graded from front to back and then grading from side to side in the back of the houses.
Did you say drainage?
Grade, yep, the
Yeah,
grades and the
but you want to make
drainage.
sure
Yep.
one thing based on that, I'll let you finish, then I'm going to say I'm
But
going to
that-
recommend
that- that's my
one
rec-
addition
I
to
vote yes,
the ordinance.
but
Yeah.
I'm gonna require that when the
Yep,
site plans
okay.
come.
All right. Commissioner Evans? Or Dennis, sorry. Commissioner Dennis?
Yes.
Okay. And I vote yes as well. I think it's a product that the town could benefit from.
So based on that, what I'm going to do is, if it meets your pleasure, is modify item K to add drainage and to what they're responsible for, so that ensures if somebody has water standing in their sideway, that the owner knows they need to address it.
Yeah, but I'd still like to see that. on
No,
the
no,
plan.
we'll still have it in the site plan,
Yep.
but this puts a little more teeth into it versus
Yeah, we don't have ponding.
saying we didn't talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Sir, if you'd like to make a comment? Just please state your name for the record.
My name is Judson Malone. I'm a resident of Georgetown. I live at 216 South Ray Street. I'm also the executive director of a new project called the Springboard Pallet Village, where we are creating new temporary housing for a good portion of our chronically homeless people in the town. So, but I'm speaking here tonight basically as just a friend. I have no particular stake or involvement with this project, but there are a couple of things that caught my attention. And I hear what Ms. Dennis is saying about the decline in home ownership and bemoaning the fact that, well, if it's not declining, that must mean rentals are going up as a percentage. But Mr. Jones cited the vacancy rates, 0.7%. That's like there are none. Okay. There's another statistic that wasn't mentioned, and that is in Delaware, how fast are rents going up? Okay. Well, if the vacancy rate is, non-existent, the demand is not being met, the market will raise the rents. Okay, so, so the argument of not building more rental because you want more home ownership is not a cause and effect. Just because you don't build the rentals does not mean you're going to get more home ownership. And I know that you can compare Georgetown to other municipalities and compare rates, but Georgetown is different in several respects. It's a county seat, there's the mix of courthouses here. But there's another interest, and the town council has been going through this, an ordinance about rental inspections. Most of those houses being inspected used to be owned by a homeowner. It used to be single family. And we've allowed our housing stock to deteriorate and become subdivided into both formal rentals and informal overcrowding. So that whole argument about rental versus home ownership, I don't think it says anything one way or the other about this project, because the more important question is, are we meeting the demand that we know we have for rental projects? Now, to the question of separation of the part, I'm glad that that seems to have gotten by as a good idea, 10 feet. I do think you have to pay attention to what the market will accept, because if it's an aesthetic as to why you would prefer 14, you have to ask yourself, is that my opinion, what I would want to live in? But then if somebody's building to build $1 million home 10 foot from another $1 million home, you know, then why wouldn't a workforce house 10 feet from another workforce house be acceptable? The danger of isolating a lot that has 14 feet of separation versus 10, in your mind, it's just a few feet. How many houses you plan on putting on?
120.
Huh?
120 versus
Okay,
102.
multiply that times
Yeah.
120.
Which he did, yeah.
Like Everett Archer used to say about the federal budget, you know, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. You know, a loss of units here or there pretty much threatens the project. So please, don't let an aesthetic about what you would like overwhelm the realities of what makes this a project that will go. I think I noticed in there that you increased the width of the streets. Was that right, 25 to 30 feet?
Well, no, I think in the original
That
one,
includes
we
the
had
curb and
12,
gutter.
it was, it was what the fire marshal requires, a minimum of 25-foot driveway, I think, and I had it before there was 15 foot.
Well, that's the driveway, not the street.
No, it's the street.
Okay, well, there's some conversation in there about the desirability of using the streets for walking.
Well, no, if you were to go visit communities today, most people are walking in the street. You go to the trails of Beaver Creek, they're not walking on the sidewalk, they're using
Yeah.
the multimodal
Well,
path in front where they're walking in the road.
My only point is, if you're going to use a street, a wider street does not mean a safer street. A wider street is not a safer street, because the traffic moves faster, because it's wider. And that's, unfortunately, in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, that was the trend. If you look here in Georgetown, you look at our older neighborhoods, very narrow streets, a lot of people walking. You look at our newer, 1970, 1980, when they laid in the streets, they're wide as all get out, and they're pretty empty. So that's just a comment, you know, in terms of reflection on that. One question about the 20 acres. Is that property boundary, or is that yield, you know, developable acreage? Not counting,
Minimum acreage.
Minimum acreage.
It's the minimum acreage for this to be an allowable.
yeah, but I'm asking how the acreage is defined.
You come in with a 20-acre parcel.
Okay, so it's not
It's not
minus
gross-
what you have
it's
to
not
give up for
gross versus
stormwater
net.
and
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay,
What we didn't want was where somebody who's got 5 acres comes in and says they want to do something like
Right.
this, because we think it would make counter.
I do have an interest in the outcome of this zoning, because we're also, as Springboard Collaborative, looking at what's going to happen next when our people are ready to find rentals. They're not going to, quite frankly, they're not going to go here unless they have a dramatic change in their economic circumstances. But they do need someplace to go. So we're going to be advancing ideas for tiny home communities. That
What was that?
Well, actually, it's not tiny home communities, it's cottage communities and little house, they're not tiny homes. There's a minimum, I think one of the things.
He's marketing phrasing for me.
Well, no, I think one of the concerns we had early on was there a minimum
We didn't establish minimum square
not for
footage.
this, however,
Yeah.
Right.
if you do research on cottage communities, which is the next incoming thing, they have minimum square footage in building envelopes. So we've done, Judd's got some of that information, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll be seeing you guys.
We can address
at
that
some point.
when it's due.
Yeah.
Yep.
Point
Yep.
being, whether you,
But it's the gap between
Yes,
something here and
exactly, yes.
temporary.
yeah, so the idea being, though, design for affordability. You know, you can subsidize for affordability to a certain extent, but then if you can build a smaller footprint, smaller unit, you can address issues about density and all the other ways you can cut costs, you get closer to something that you can rent for $300 or $400 or $500 a month. Again, it would be an increase in rentals, but it would be people who desperately need a place, you know, to live. So it's just an aside, just a heads up, you know, but I really appreciate you taking time to hear me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jean, based on some of the information that was just, said over the evening, perhaps you would consider amending or adding to, I'm trying to find the page in here, benefits the town of Georgetown? Maybe, maybe there needs to be something else said here about not just the benefits to the, but statement of need, the low vacancy rate.
So the stuff that Mr. Jones provided,
Yeah.
okay.
The
What I'll do is
section.
an entire slide on that. Okay.
And just missing on the housing continuum that there are certain types of housing that are missing. Like, for example, this is designed to meet a gap in housing. What you're talking about is designed to meet another gap in the housing continuum. So there would be, in an ideal world, there would be a continuum of housing that would meet all these different needs, and we
Yes.
obviously don't have any of them, or many of
Well,
them.
we're missing,
Yeah,
so
well,
as we talked about at the last meeting, we've got plenty of housing for this end of the spectrum and plenty of housing for this end of the spectrum. I don't have anything for this portion. And this is a first step, and then what Judd alluded to would be another step.
that's all I have.
One other thing, would it be, I know you had a question about what's affordable. So Kevin
Yeah.
Gilmore spoke at the Sussex County Today and Tomorrow conference. He does a Housing Affordability 101. And he spoke to the Sussex County Association of Towns at our breakfast meeting last month, actually this month. Would that be something you would be interested in having him come and present here? He talks about what median household income. One of the interesting statistics is, I think, on average, in order for something to be affordable, it's about 30% of your income should be spent on rents or
Yeah,
housing
that's
costs.
been the standard.
In
Well,
Sussex
used to be
County, it's
25%.
approximately 45%, and then you put on top of that transit cost. One of the things that I think everybody knows is we're still becoming a medical hub with the PAM Hospital, and there's some other things that are happening around that I think we'll slowly start to see an uptick in some of those things, and then obviously the more people we have, then there's more demand for
But would that be
services.
something that he comes to speak to planning and zoning on, or would it be better, because we have a public hearing, but council has a public hearing also, correct?
Yes.
On this, so would it be better to have it, to educate, we've got our education here, I think, tonight.
Well,
So
this,
should
you've
this-
got the education on an ordinance. Would
Right.
you like education on what is affordable
Maybe when the
housing?
next,
'Cause we've
when the
had
next
that question.
proposal comes in and all that, but to have it for our public hearing, I don't know if that's something.
No, I'm not, I'm just saying as another, at another meeting, not part of the public hearing for this, yes. Is there interest in having that presentation? I think there is based on,
Yep.
so I'll get him lined up for that.
University of Delaware just send us to a course. They have them all the time.
Well, you can watch it from home and Zoom.
And then, just so you know, at the council meeting on Monday night, there was a request for a workshop with planning commission, members of council, the planning staff, to look at the planning process.
Zoning.
And what it takes.
Was
Well,
it zoning?
it's the zoning process, but I think we need to separate it between two pieces. One is the process that a project goes through, And then the land use piece, which is UR1, UR2, UR3, and what's permitted. Because one of the things we're gonna do in the budget we're putting together is a rewrite of the zoning, of the land use code. But there's characteristics of the process that, where people say it takes too long and that type of stuff. So we'll try to hash that out.
As long as they have pizza.
Maybe we'll have it at Nicola's.
One more reason why you should watch it at home on Zoom, you can have your pizza there.
If I'm on Zoom, I'm having a beer.
But thank
And
you
your
all
beer.
for your time tonight and for letting us come back.
Jocelyn, planning,
The only things I want to let you know is that the Oaks at Georgetown has submitted a Phase 2 site plan. It is addressing simply the townhome portion of that entire project. So it will be townhomes, and they are also adding a community center and pool to that section.
Nice.
So you will see it when it comes in front of you for preliminary on the amendments that they're making to the plan, but that's been submitted. And then just as an FYI, Dunbarton Oaks, they had done a major renovation to a section of their apartments. Now they're getting ready to do Phase 2, so the next group of buildings are getting ready to start on them. So we're having a meeting with them probably next week.
looks really
So that's happening, so that's
They
good.
did a nice job.
They did.
And that's about it for me.
okay.
I think they told everyone, they could.
That concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now you can go to wrestle.
I'm gonna go my second wrestling match.
Yep.
Thanks, Judd. Appreciate it. Well, no.
No, you're
Let's have public comment.
Appreciate it.
It's all important.
Shoot me your statistics and then I'll see.
It is, yeah, definitely.